Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Nadex Morning Analysis, where we look at hotspots in the markets for the day. It is Tuesday, September 21st. My name is Todd Rich. I'm with Nadex. With me, Brian Caprice from Keep Trading Simple. Before Brian and I jump into it, I do need to quickly share this disclaimer that trading involves risk and may not be appropriate for everyone, that any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And this is an educational session. Please do not construe anything Brian or I say as a buy or sell recommendation. We are doing this for your education purposes. So clearly, we had an interesting day in the markets yesterday. Lots of volatility. Would expect volatility to to be back for a while, particularly when we've got tomorrow. We've got the Fed doing their economic. They're going to be covering interest rates, but they're also going to give the economic projections, and then they're going to have their press conference. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, going to be an interesting time. Now, in regarding yesterday, clearly there was a washout, and maybe it got a little overdone in the overnight session. Other markets have all recovered. Even in China, they even closed higher today. So right now, everything is looking higher for the U.S. We've seen a recovery in crude. We've seen a recovery in gold. We're seeing a recovery across all the equities. That's what we want to talk about this morning. So with that, Brian, let's just get into it. Get into the charts and run through these. I think oil is a good place to start, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So yesterday we talked about and we mentioned the $70 mark. And again, we were sitting basically right down there yesterday morning. And again, kind of back to what we've talked about before in the past, right? The big down and then the reversal coming in the US session. This actually gave us one extra push back down again and one extra push up in the overnight. And now we are pushing back down again. So a lot of stuff on the chart to talk about. I would say right now where it is, and again, we're going to start hearing about being that it's September now. Yesterday the world was supposedly ending, although it's Tuesday, so it hasn't ended yet. For everybody that was convinced that it would yesterday. Right now, I would say the way that oil is pushed down in the overnight, it's really kind of is going to be more of a demand issue today. And again, I would say that oil is going to be a driving factor. Now, things that we need to look at for today for oil, there is some buyers that are coming in. We had this little 3-to-1 yesterday, but again, you guys can see where that just basically pushed down. I would watch this little level down here around, I don't know, 70.45-ish. It's a level that we had some basing, and then we actually had a little bit of a bounce and touch off of it. I think that's going to be one level that maybe at that like 10:30-ish time, we could take a print, a bounce. But overall, I don't see necessarily the big trend being, a big kind of spiking kind of piece today in oil. Where I see oil being is more of a later day thing. The reason why is because with API coming out inventory reports, remember tomorrow's Wednesday, we have the API inventory report. Right. And last week, the miss was minus 6.4. The forecast was minus 3.6. So it was quite a large miss last week. Typically, after a very, very big miss, they try to bring it back closer, but again, we don't necessarily have the forecast in. The forecast is not printed here, so it's going to take a little bit longer for us to kind of really, truly get a gauge of where we're going to be. If you guys are attending the session later on today at, again, when I speak at 11, I'm going to give you the news breakout strategy that I've mentioned and talked about in little pieces. I will give the full one out later today, but you're going to use the API from today as well as this number tomorrow morning to be able to trade that. So, I would say look for, a push down. I would say probably the top and bottom for this one today. Again, we know we have sellers sitting up top, probably the 71.50 mark. And then again, one little bounce, but you got to keep that 70 back in there. I mean, that 70, it withheld 2 shots. The last one went pretty deep in there. And then we kind of bounced off of it. But again, 70 is a psychological number. It is a big thing for the news. It's like 1,800 in gold, 35,000. In the Dow, it's just one of those big numbers that people will talk about a lot. So as we slowly creep back down, look for potential buying opportunities. If the U.S. session takes it higher, and again, U.S. sessions tend to take oil higher. That's a little bit more of a common thing that we've seen push down in the European session, drive back up again. Again, I'd be looking at some of the levels. And, in reality, 71.50, right above that, we got another little level. And right above that, we have another level. So really, the 71 to 72 area has a lot of speed bumps in the way to really kind of give us some issues.
By the way,
that's what we got for today.
I wanted to show there is one was rather interesting on the actual sell-off yesterday. I mean, we obviously hit that 70 level twice. But the second time we hit it, and I'm going to make this nice and big if I can, so people can really see it. It's just kind of, I like to point stuff like this out because I know it's things that people look for, but you can actually see a hammer. If you've ever seen the hammer, it's oil's coming down. Sellers got completely exhausted. They did push it through that 70 level, but it immediately came back. That is actually a hammer that's kind of telling you, hey, we're looking for a reversal here. So not only did it hit the level, it also gave you a hammer. There was two different things saying here was a buying opportunity, and then from there it did trend higher up into the exact area where Brian's talking about, which is up at that close to that 7150. So
Mm.
volatility, would expect to see it still with the global challenges, with the economy, with COVID, um, supply and demand, which actually makes it kind of fun. I mean, this is what traders are looking for. We want volatile
Mm.
markets. So
Yeah, yeah, and again, we kind of expected it. I mentioned it yesterday with everything dropping to the downside. I was not on the sell train yesterday, and the thing we mentioned is in times like that, the worst time to get in is after everybody else has already done it. So by the time you hear about it, a lot of the movement has already occurred. It did continue to drop lower, but again, the best thing is instead of trying to catch a move in the last 15% of it, figure out where the next move is starting. And again, we saw it here in oil. If you look over in gold, I mean, gold did
yeah,
the same thing. We talked about it being lower. We missed that 70-40 level and it drove back up again. Now, gold, interestingly enough, is actually up in an area. We talked about that 1776, which was a fib 50% level that was pulling back to, as well as an area seller. So this is an interesting opportunity today that, again, gold is in an area where it looks like it could provide a little bit of a reversal for us today. And it kind of matches, right, with what we see in oil. Silver is kind of the same thing. Silver basically maintained and pushed off that 22 level. So, as far as the metals go, and then again, the other thing we mentioned is, again, don't sell after this big move in price. I mean, yesterday we talked about how expect the indices to go green at some point, right? Find the bottom and go. And really, it doesn't matter which one we looked at. We can do NQ and all of them. Here are the two levels that we said were potential areas of halting. And you can see it bounced off the first one, came through, and then just went a little bit below the second one before rallying all the way back up again. Russell had the same scenario, right? We had a level a little bit lower again. We turned it, it hit it, it bounced, it came back down, and then bounced higher again. And again, Russell just happened to bounce off an area of sellers right up at 2200 that we mentioned before. It's a level of stabilization and a pop. So this could be an interesting push to the downside, as well as ES did one. YM also had one that it was just kind of pulling off of, and I kind of dove in on a lower time frame. I was looking for if we get a rally right before the open, there's another opportunity to take this one short as well. But again, up in one area where we're seeing some sellers and it's having issues. Russell has the same scenario. NQ is pushed up, and NQ is a little bit busier. These are a lot of whips back and forth. And again, if we were looking for levels of stabilization, especially where they've been tested, here's your level of stabilization. You're punched down, and there's your test. Look what we happen to roll off of it at the European session open at 3 o'clock this morning. The same type of scenario, as well as the ES also did the same thing, where you had a level of stabilization right here. Price hit it and has now started to push back down again. So this one, I would say of all of them, the ES is really kind of what I'm seeing right now, at least on the smaller time frames, is really the best setup. I like some of the pops. I like some of the bases in this one the best, and the ES tends to be kind of the cleanest of all of them. But at the same time, all three of them in the same scenario. People see green today. They saw red yesterday. They saw a retracement. Again, could we turn negative? There's not a whole lot of news today to really do it, but it only is going to take one news headline and these things turn to roll. And again, that's how the indices tend to work. So, I'd say while yesterday we were looking for longs, today I would say maybe see if we have any levels of collapse or a little bit of a pull up. And again, that initial first 30 minutes is really where all the opportunity existed yesterday. The best trade setups were in the first 15 minutes yesterday after the open.
So yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see what happens when the retail traders do come back in. I personally, I know that there's some concerns around what's going on with in China with Everguard, and people are worried about contagion and that creeping, taking the whole global economy down. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure. I think the market wanted to price in some of the risk of some of that, but we certainly did get a washout. We've got that bounce back today, and I would expect volatility to be around for a while. So
Mm.
we'll make some for some great trading opportunities. Brian, do you have anything else you want to really add for today, other than
Yeah,
just taking a look at
I
those
would say
charts?
dollar CAD. Here's the dollar CAD chart from
After the
yesterday. So
election too,
The Canadian
right?
election is over. Nothing changed. It was an enormous waste of money. I think 2 seat changed hands out of like 300 seats that were available. Nothing really changed. Trudeau lost the popular vote yet again. The way they do it up there is it's off of seats. It's kind of like our electoral college, to not the same, but kind of the same thing. So end all be all, nothing changes in Canada. The popular vote was lost again. Some of the other parties gain a
But he,
little bit of ground, and
yeah,
that's it.
but
Nothing
he still
changes.
holds
So
on to power.
yeah, he does. And again, I don't think there was any real expectation. His party was the only one that was really believing that he could get the majority government. So it's still minority government. If anything, a lot of people are going to be like, hey, listen, this was, at the end of the day, nothing changed. It was a lot of money to put on this election. It was early. I think the annoyance level with Trudeau is a lot higher now. A lot of people were like, now is not the time in the middle of a pandemic. And he was trying to capitalize on all the benefits and everything they did with trying to
Right.
stabilize the economy, giving businesses. So it's kind of one of those things. They're not as dirty in their politics up there, but at the same time, he's still losing the popular vote, and it's getting, I think, bigger than it was before, with some of the other
Now,
parties as well. So,
the rollover here, did you feel this had anything to do with the election, or was this just all oil?
um, again, a lot of it is oil. We saw oil continue to rise off that 70 level. Oil rises, the Canadian dollar gets strength, but also because, again, it's not so much the change of power, but the fact that it's over takes some uncertainty out of it. And then the
Right.
second factor of that there's no change of guard, there's nothing that's really going to change. He's like, oh, it's a mandate to take care of everybody. It's like, yeah, because that's why you
Right.
lost votes, is because people don't believe that. But it's the fact that it's a known entity, nothing changes. I mean, really, there's really almost nothing that changed as far as the election goes. So it becomes an oil thing, and again, it's removing risk from the equation. There's no, there's nothing there that's going to be different than it was before. So Canada is still on its path to do what it's going to do.
Excellent.
So
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, with that, any questions for Nadex, please email us customerservice@nadex.com. Any questions for Brian, you can email Brian at support@keeptradingsimple.com. Remember, we're on in 2 hours for the boot camp. Brian will be kicking us off on trading commodities, specifically oil and nat gas,
mhm.
the energies, around news events and how to take advantage of those news events. And we're going to be having one tomorrow. So if you're not familiar with how you can trade around these economic reports, please join Brian then. But we do have a full day of content. And yeah, I'm trying to think to summarize what we had today. Again, a washout yesterday. We're seeing a healthy bounce across the board in the markets today. Maybe that's already been priced in, but stay sharp because volatility is back and there is plenty of trading opportunity. With that, hopefully we'll catch you later today. If not, we will see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining everyone. And